Welcome to another episode of the PGTK podcast, an interview podcast. My name is Emmanuel, and if you've seen the Houston-based reality of wrestling, you've probably heard one of the voices doing commentary, whether it's online or on the television. And one of these guys is the guest this week, Brad Gilmore. We talk about his beginnings on reality of wrestling as a ring announcer, as well as working his way up to the commentary table. We talk about how he approaches commentary day in and day out at reality of wrestling, as well as sharing his time as an entrant in the Last Stand Rumble. We'll talk about the event by the end of this conversation, but let's share this episode to people so that people can enjoy this episode with us. Leave us a 5-star review, and without further ado, here is our conversation with Brad Gilmore. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate the invite.
Thank you so much. And of course, you've done commentary before. Let's go talk before that. How did you find wrestling as a fan?
Oh, as a fan, man. You know, I feel like I have the same story so many people do. I remember it vividly, though. I'm in my parents' home in their what was called the family room, laying down, watching television, flipping around, and this was 1999-ish, 98, 99, and I saw Stone Cold Steve Austin on Monday Night Raw, and I just remember thinking, who is that? That's awesome, and I became a wrestling fan, and I was literally probably 5 or 6 years old, so I was in kindergarten, and then I remember going into first grade, and I had other friends, my best friend Avery Davis, shout out to Avery, who we're still best friends today. We bonded over, DX and The Rock, stuff like that. So it goes back quite a ways, man.
And what was that match that kind of solidified you as a fan? Of course, you got to know it. And what was that favorite match?
Oh man, if I had to say a favorite match from that, this is actually you know what? I guarantee you, no one will ever tell you this answer. So that's why I'm gonna go for it. WrestleMania 2000. Everybody loves WrestleMania 2000 for the Triangle Ladder match, right? Of course. How could you not love the Triangle Ladder match? But my favorite match from that show was the Hardcore Battle Royal, the 15-minute Hardcore Battle Royal, which I believe Crash Holly won, or Hardcore Holly won at the end. Hardcore Holly won at the end after hitting the candy jar on Taz, and wasn't supposed to win. I later found out, but mistakes happen even at WrestleMania, and I love that. I used to rent WrestleMania 2000 from Blockbuster. WrestleMania 2000 was at Blockbuster, and I used to rent it from Blockbuster and just watch the Hardcore Battle Royal.
Oh my gosh, I gotta find that. I have to rewatch. That's been a while since I've seen that too. And
it's ridiculous.
I gotta watch that. It's been a while. I thank God I peek. I can probably find that somewhere down the line. And with the stuff that you're doing, especially doing media, how did wrestling kind of help you go on your media career journey?
So that's a great question. I was doing some radio online radio here in Houston. For a company called Local Live Houston, and they really, I am and was at the time in a band, and we went to go do an interview at this radio station, and then I ended up talking to the program director, and he was like, "Hey man, you're really good at this," and we ended up having a conversation. Next thing you know, I'm on the air with them, never hosting a radio show before at the age of 18, and I did that, and then the reality wrestling opportunity came up, and to answer your question, it's helped me in a variety of ways, because pro wrestling, especially when you're working in it, is the ultimate entertainment boot camp, because you're learning how to look at camera angles, hit your marks, make sure the lighting cues are right, audio levels are good. You have one take to do it, so pressure's on. You better know what you're talking about. You're learning how to tell a story, how to come across to a television audience, not just an audience inside the arena. And so from that, it helped me sharpen the skills, and it helped me learn, how to talk effectively, how to communicate effectively on a broadcast, especially in a finite amount of time. And then that led me to doing radio with Booker T, which also opened so many doors, not only to local media here in Houston, but to podcasting and traveling the country, doing things in Los Angeles and Las Vegas and all kinds of places, going down to Orlando. And it's been incredible. And that's what even led me to doing more television with the affiliate that Reality Wrestling's on air with, CW39 Houston. I'm now doing things with them on Friday mornings, interviewing celebrities and doing content like that. And that's led me to talking to people like Matthew McConaughey. And the list goes on and on and on. So, that the launching pad really was Reality of Wrestling for everything that I'm doing now.
What was the advice that Booker would give you when you first started Reality?
Well, the first thing he ever told me was, hey, man, at this level in pro wrestling, there's not a lot of money in it, right? So don't look at this as this is going to be your career, but I promise you there's going to be a lot of opportunity. If you stick around, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And I have to say that man lived up to every ounce of that, piece of advice, because there's been so much opportunity, man. Like, this silly world of pro wrestling has gotten me in more rooms and more doors and more phone calls and Zoom calls and places that I never, ever would have imagined myself being. And it's because of this silly world of pro wrestling. Beautiful world, but silly.
Oh, it does. Absolutely. And of course, like, what was your first gig coming into Reality?
So the first thing I did, so this is actually a good story. So the way I even got in is I saw on Twitter, I was a wrestling fan, but I had lapsed, like a lot of us do. When I got into high school, I got more into music and I got more into girls, and those were my distractions, and not so much pro wrestling anymore. And it was 2012. I would still check in for WrestleManias and stuff, but I woke up one morning, I looked on Twitter, and you know how you do, you click on one thing and click on another and click on another. And so somehow I got on WWE's Twitter feed. I don't remember how, but somehow I'm on their Twitter feed and I'm scrolling and I'm looking and I see something from Booker T and I'm like, oh man, Booker T, he's the coolest, man. What is that guy up to nowadays? Because again, I hadn't been tapped into the wrestling world. And so I go in, I see he's doing, like, I think he was the general manager at the time or doing commentary, something like that. And then I saw that he's put a post out. Hey, I'm looking for a commentator for my wrestling show. Send an email here if you're interested. And I knew Booker lived in Houston. And so I said, okay, this might be something. So I sent in an email. I might have fudged a few details, just a couple, no more than the average person does on their resume. And I didn't think anything about it. And then 3 weeks later, I get a phone call on a Tuesday evening. And it was them saying, this guy, Paul Cook, said, hey, we want to bring you down for a tryout. I'm like, awesome.
Oh.
So I go down for the tryout, and I realize it's just me and another guy, and we go in for it, and Booker wasn't there, but this Paul Cook guy was, and our director, still to this day, Kevin Bernhardt, was. And they pulled out an iPad, and they're like, well, we want you to call a match. Now, mind you, Emmanuel, I've never called a pro wrestling match. I have no experience in this. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm way out of my comfort zone and league. But I said, you know what? The one thing I will say, at the risk of sounding self-aggrandizing, I always knew I had personality, right? So I could probably bring some personality to it, and maybe that'll be my saving grace. So we do the match, and I mean, it was awful. I had actually never done so bad at something. I've been bad at plenty of things, but never that bad at any one thing. And so I remember leaving there thinking, well, I blew that opportunity. And I didn't even get to meet Booker, and I blew the opportunity. And a couple days go by, and I get a phone call from that Paul Cook guy again saying, hey, our ring announcer has strep throat. Have you ever ring announced before? And I was like, yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And they say, well, come down. Booker wants to meet you, and come to the school tonight if you can. I said, no problem. So I went down there to meet with Booker. And next thing I know, I'm at the wrestling show for Reality of Wrestling. This is November 2012, and I'm 19 years old, I guess, at the time. And I go out there, and I've never done it before, and just remember the thing I was thinking about in my head was sound like Bruce Buffer, sound like Bruce Buffer, sound like Bruce Buffer. And so I did my best Bruce Buffer impression that I could. And I remember seeing Booker after the show, and this is the second time I'd ever met him. And he goes, "Shot it good out there tonight, kid." And I said, "I appreciate that, Book." He goes, "You going to be available next month?" I said, "Yeah, I can. I'll be here." And, rest was history.
Do you still remember that voice to this day? Can you still pull it off? We're not going to do it now, of course. Can you pull it off?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. And I've had to, so I did ring announcing probably for about 3 years with reality wrestling, maybe a little less. And every so often we'd find ourselves like where our ring announcer was out or we were in between people or something. And I'd have to, brush up the old announcing voice. And we actually did some boxing events at Reality Wrestling's arena in Texas City. And I got to do some boxing announcing, which was real fun too. Something again, dude, I'm like game for anything, right? So if you throw it at me, I'll try it. I might, crap the bed in it or what have you, but I'll at least try it. And so that attitude and that, not that I'm not afraid to fail, but I know that failing's a part of life. So I think that if that's the worst that could happen, it's the worst that could happen. So, I could still dust off the pipes if I have to.
I'm curious, like, what did you learn? Just basically winging to ring announce. Like, what were some stumbling blocks that you came across when you did it?
So I always had trouble remembering people's info. So I'd have the cheat sheet and had the cards. One of the things what's really good about ring announcing is you learn timing. Because the announcement is all about the timing and the pomp and circumstance. Because in all honesty, you don't really need a ring announcer. Do you know what I mean? Like you do, but you don't really need the over the top in this corner fighting, out of the whatever.
Right.
You don't really need it, but it's about the show. It's not about the sport. So I'm talking about boxing, MMA, or wrestling. It's not about the sport. It's about the show. The pomp and circumstance, setting the ambiance. And so much in a pro wrestling ring announcement is in the timing of it, knowing when to go down with your voice and in a lower register, when to bring it up, when to add a little gravel to it, when to hold a note. One of my favorite ones was Ryan Davidson, who's our current Texas champion and probably one of the best dudes ever in the world, a top 5 guy I've ever met. And I remember loving to do his because he always had, I don't remember his weight, but it was like, from Bel Air, Texas, weighing in the night at 242 pounds, he is the reality wrestling champion, Ruthless Ryan Davidson. Like knowing how to do those moments, thank you. Those were but knowing to hold Ryan, knowing to emphasize Davidson, knowing the preamble that comes before that. And look, I don't know this because none of the boys have ever said it to me, but I can only assume. And Chris Russo, who's there now, and Emily, who's there now, they do a great job. That hypes the boys up too, and the girls. That hypes them up. When they're sitting there and they hear their name. I actually vividly remember doing Ryan's one time as he's walking to the ring, and he even kind of did it along with me, and I knew that it was getting him hyped. And so there's a lot that goes into the art of ring. No one's ever asked me that. But that there's a lot that goes into the art of it, and I've definitely learned time.
I heard the Bruce Buffer for about 2 seconds, and I was like, there it is. It showed up.
Shout out to Bruce. I've gotten to know Bruce Buffer a little bit. I've talked to him a few times, and he's probably, in my opinion, and I know his brother Michael is lauded as the ring announcing GOAT. But to me, Bruce Buffer is the best ring announcer in the history of sport. He's just awesome.
Yeah, and we're gonna switch gears too, because now your main responsibilities now is on the commentary side. How did that segue from doing your stuff on ring announcing to there?
Yeah, that's another fun story. I think Booker, because again, going back to the first time I met him, the actually first thing Booker T ever said to me was, "Hey, you're a pretty good looking kid," and I was like, "Oh, we appreciate that, Book," and that was the first thing he ever said to me. And I think that he always had it in his mind. He wanted the show to be young, and he wanted a young face for the show. And when commentary was going on for that time, Booker was doing it with a guy, AJ, Adrian Jones, who's so good. I love Adrian Jones. And then it went on to Adrian and Rich Bocchini, who became Rich Brennan in the WWE, had a stint on SmackDown and NXT. And I think he was trying to make the show younger. And me and my broadcast partner at the time, Matt Topolsky, we went in and Booker called me one day. We were doing it was right before Comic Palooza in 2015, I believe. And he called me and said, hey kid, you're gonna do the commentary this weekend. All right. Now the thing about that is normally we tape 3 episodes in a taping. Well, this one we happen to be taping like 8 episodes. So,
oh my God.
So for your first time, there's over 2 days. So for your first time doing this, it's like, oh crap. Like I've never done this before. And I did remember freaking out. And I remember over preparing. And I remember sitting there doing the first couple matches and knowing I didn't do well because I was trying to sound like an announcer. Well, here we go. Collared elbow, tie up. Ryan Davison takes him down. It wasn't that bad, but it was in my head. It was, and I remember after that first taping, Kevin Bernhardt again was like, "Hey man, like just relax, just go out and be yourself. Don't think about being a ring announcer, or a commentator. Just go out and do you, man." And I remember the next day I felt much better about it. And then I was kind of facilitating the color commentary role. And then kind of in the pandemic, I switched over to me doing play-by-play and then, trying to reform the team. And right now the team we have is so good. Me and Brittany Houtland and Kirby Carrion. I really put our commentary up against anybody's at our level and at most levels, because we're very in sync. We know our roles. We hit our spots. We know what we're supposed to do. And we always make sure the match comes before ourselves. Because I think sometimes we have a microphone in front of you. You have a tendency to want to, want to be entertaining, but you have to be very careful to not ever make it about you. Because the show, to me, is not about me. It's not about Brady. It's not about Kirby. It's about the guys and the girls in the ring and the stories that are being told. We are the interface for the audience to let them know, hey, this is what's going on. Okay, this is why this is going on. This is where this guy or girl was. This is where they're going. This is where they want to be. How are we going to tell that story effectively within the confines of a 12-minute pro wrestling match? And I really, that's another thing, man. I've loved learning that side of the business, and it's nothing I ever aspired to do or wanted to do, but I'm so grateful that I've had that experience.
How has communication been such an important part in commentary? Because, of course, on the venue, you hear the audiences react. But what about the ones who are on the TV or who are streaming who may not have that same reaction anticipation from the people in the crowd? Like, how is communication such an important part in commentating?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's everything, right? And my whole world revolves around communication. I mean, it's what I studied for my bachelor's at the University of Houston, and then my master's that I just graduated with in the fall from the University of Alabama. The thing about communication is, in pro wrestling specifically, is we have an intended message, right, that we want to send to the audience member who's then going to receive it. And we just have to make sure it's done concisely and effectively and entertaining at the same time. And so for the at-home audience, they need to feel the energy that you're feeling, right? And a lot of the times at the Walker Texas Lloyd Arena, when we got a sold-out crowd and we got 300, 400, 500 people screaming, at a Dex the Line Dixon match or at a remote controls match or Izzy James and Eric Lockhart or whatever the match is, you want to make sure that you're channeling their energy through your voice to the television viewer. Because if somebody imagine we have a cage match going on and you're watching from home and I go, oh, and there's a great move there off the top rope. Oh, okay. And he's going for the cover. 1, 2, and a kick out after 2. I'm not calling spring training, for Major League Baseball, or even the minor leagues or a golf match. I'm calling pro wrestling. He's on the top of the cage. Oh my God, what is he thinking? You got to give him the energy because you want that energy to be transferable to who's ever watching at home. And again, if they feel that you're feeling it and they see that the crowd is feeling it and they're jumping up for joy and and if anybody ever sees me at a reality wrestling show, I mean, I'm into it, man. I'm up on the table. I'm running around. I'm getting close to the action. I'm jumping. I'm screaming. That's not an act. That's because I still, man, 12 years into this thing, I'm into it. You know what I mean? I'm into it. I'm all the way in. And I still get caught up in the stories because what we do at Reality Wrestling, make no mistake, is like nowhere else. Nowhere else. Unless you're assigned to NXT or you're on Dynamite or Raw or SmackDown, no one else has what we have. And that is not an exaggeration. That is not hyperbole. Nobody has what we have. No one has the quality of training, the quality of facilities, the quality of production, the thought, understanding, and know-how that goes into putting on a professional wrestling show, not just a match, and not just an event that has 20 matches. You know, we want to tell stories throughout. We started putting up, you know, little clips on the Trons between matches to help facilitate stories. We're writing scripts. We're really thinking about this, not only for the in the arena office at the audience at the Walker Texas Lawyer Arena, but the at-home audience and the viewers on YouTube and social media and the wrestlers themselves. You know, we're really thinking about this from every angle to try to put on the best contest and the best exhibition and the best show. I want people leaving and go and having an argument about what match was the best. You know what I mean? And that's what happens routinely. You know, oh, I love the tag team title match. Oh, man, but did you see Matty Ice and Will All Day? They tore the house down in the main event. I want there to be those debates, and it's everything is structured. And we follow one general, man. We follow Booker T. I mean, here's the thing. Think about this. I just want you to think about this. And I don't mean to rant or ramble, but I want you to think about this.
No, keep going, dude. Keep going.
Think about, okay, if you want to be a tag team wrestler, let's say you come into this business to be a tag team wrestler. Well, guess what? You got a guy who's part of one of the most decorated tag teams in history in the Hall of Fame with Harlem Heat. Okay, say you want to be a guy who's really big on his in-ring work. You know, you want to be the best technician. You got a guy who in WCW had the best 7 series with Chris Benoit, who's some of the best matches that you'll ever see in your entire life. He had matches with Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, Bret Hart, tore the house down, right, routinely from a technical wrestling perspective. Okay. But say, you know what, maybe technical wrestling isn't for me. I want to be entertaining. I just want to be an entertainer. Okay. Transform him to WWE, where he's having matches like the grocery store fight with Stone Cold Steve Austin, or he's doing promos in the back with Goldust and being entertaining and being funny, but still, you know, knowing how to beat somebody up. That program he had with The Rock that culminated at SummerSlam. So entertaining, those promos leading up. Okay, but you know what? I don't want to be just an entertaining guy. You know, I want to be, you know, a character. I want to be a character. Well, okay. Well, guess what? You ever heard of King Booker?
Yes.
You know, one of the great characters of all time.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know what though? I just don't want to be a character. I want to be like an authority figure on the television show. Okay. Well, guess what? He's the general manager of SmackDown. Okay. He did that too. Well, you know what? I want to know how to wrestle in the main event. Well, last I checked, he was a 6-time World Heavyweight Champion and wrestled Triple H at WrestleMania. Doesn't get much bigger than that. You know, oh, but I want to try my hand at commentary. Oh, yeah, guess what? He's on TV right now as we're doing this interview on commentary, right? What part of the business has he not touched? You know, what part of the business has he not touched? Why would you ever want to learn from anybody else? You know, I don't want to learn from somebody who had a cup of coffee, you know, working a dark match in 1986, you know, before a house show in Sheboygan. You know, I want somebody who's been there and done that, whether at any level, you know, and you know, and he's brought so many people up with him to the dance. And if you go into the Walker Texas Lawyer Arena right now, you're going to see a series of banners along the back wall of every student that's come out and gotten a major contract. You know, proof is in the pudding with Reality of Wrestling.
Right.
And I don't even know what the hell your question was, but that's the answer.
So that was a really good point you brought up with Booker being basically the foundation over reality. When you do commentary and when you see the students who are doing these matches, like what do you see in most of these students, even though you're kind of doing commentary? Like what are some observations that you've come across when you see the students do a match?
Well, again, being around Booker as long as I have, you hear his lessons and you understand what he's looking for. And the thing is too, he and everybody in reality wrestling, whether it's me, because sometimes people come up to me and they ask me, "Hey, what'd you think of my match?" And there'd be things that I notice. Hey, yeah, you know what? I took down this note. Next time for me, do this instead of do that. Or Kevin or Charmel or who's ever kind of on the behind the scenes of things. We all have the same goal. I want everybody who steps foot in a reality wrestling ring to get a major contract. So the things that I look for out there, not only at the same time am I trying to make sure these stories are effectively told and stuff like that, but I'm trying to get these guys and girls over from a commentary perspective, because sometimes if I'm bigging them up enough on commentary, somebody's going to start believing them. And there's been many a times all of a sudden somebody has a new backstory that they didn't know about. But, somebody comes up to me, "Wait, I played football in college? Hell yeah, man, you were a top recruit." As far as I know, trying to get it. But what I see from them in the matches is really, really putting to, utilizing the lessons of the book and the whole training staff. Because we got great trainers, Brian Keith, Ryan Davidson, Gino Medina, Kevin Barnard himself. So many other people who have helped out and continue to train there. All the things that they have taught, I see them trying to put them into use, and that's what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to be this as a proving ground. Hey, this is what the lesson of the week was. Let me try to implement that. Let me try to make sure if I hit a drop kick, I got to stop and pose because I got to look cool, man. I got to let the photographers get their pictures in. I got to make sure, I have stuff that can be merchandised. So yeah, I see a lot of the lessons, and if I see an opportunity that was missed, I make sure I let them know, "Hey man, or hey lady, you could have done this and this would have got you this."
When did you start to get commentary? Like when did you say, "Oh, I got what I'm doing. I'm actually getting what I'm supposed to do as a commentator"?
It was several years, actually. I mean, honestly, I think I probably did it 2.5 years around until I started to really figure out what my role was supposed to be. Again, so many people, whether you're going to do stand-up comedy, whether you're going to be a rapper, whether you're going to be an actor or whatever it is, you always emulate the people who you are fans of, right? So I think a lot of the time I was high on Bobby Heenan. And if you go back and listen to some stuff in the first few years that I started, I was really trying to hone in on Bobby Heenan. And I think I got lost in the sauce, trying to be too entertaining and not worried about the story that was being told. And so there was a light bulb moment to where I'm like, "Oh, right. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be telling the story. I'm supposed to be highlighting these parts of it so that the people at home understand what it is they're seeing and making them care, planting a seed in there to make them feel a certain way." And I still find myself to this day, and I've had people compliment my work, which is always nice. You always love to hear that. But I'm probably my biggest critic in everything that I do, and I'm always thinking, "Oh yeah, man." What excites me, Emmanuel, is when somebody comes up and says, "Man, that show was so great," or "Man, that commentary call was so great," and I go, "Yeah, it was." In my head, I go, "Yeah, it was pretty good." But I see so many ways it could be better. I see so many ways it could be better. That's what excites me. That's what still has kept me, not the only thing, but kept me wanting to do commentary for the last decade plus is, I can still find places to get better, man. I can still see, I could have tightened that up. Oh, I should have brought that home there. I should have let Kirby call that. I should have brought Brittany in that moment. We should have created some conflict at that. And I'm always thinking that. And, and Kevin, who directs the show, will know because I call him probably more than most people in my life. And I go, "Man, I think we could do better, man. I really think we could do better." And I'm always trying to find that.
Yeah, and now that we're going to talk about, especially on the commentary side, we're having the Last Stand Rumble this weekend. And how many years have we covered that?
How many years have we done it?
Yes.
Is that what we said? This will be the 5th one. So we started 2018. We did one in 2019. And then 2020, 2021, pandemic, we couldn't do it. So we did 22 and then we did 2023. So yeah, this would be the fifth one.
How is each year? Like, how did that build up to where it is now?
Well, what's funny is this, and I think it's okay I say this, because sometimes we all have like our little pet projects, or something that we push. And thankfully and graciously, and trust me, the opportunity is not lost on me. I found myself in the meetings at Reality of Wrestling where my ideas will be listened to. Now, that's not saying they always go with them. And to me, I like being an idea man. Hey, what if they did this? What if we did that? What if we did that? Because I always say this, I'm not married to it, but this is what I'm thinking, And a lot of times they get shot down and sometimes they get gone with. But one of the things that I really was pushing for a few years, and Kevin started to come in with me, and then I don't even think we ever talked to Booker about it. But for years, I kept telling Kevin, man, we should do a Rumble. Man, we should do a Rumble. I love the Rumble. We should do one. He's like, yeah, we should. Yeah, we should. And I think finally we got enough gumption to go to Booker and go, hey, we think we could pull off a 20-man Rumble. And that's how it started. It was 20 the first time. And we think we think we can pull it off. And then last year it built up to 30 men in the Rumble. And you never know, it could be more than that. Who needs constraints? But yeah, it was one of those things. And then last year was that opportunity that came up. And I still don't even know how it happened. But that's where somehow, I don't know if it was me or Kevin or both of us, and we were spitballing about it. But at some point, the idea came up to, Brad, what if you're in the Rumble? What if you make, your entry into it? And I did do it. And it was definitely something I'll remember forever.
The first reaction when I saw that, I was like, who did you lose a bet? That was my very first question. Like, did you lose a bet and you wind up being in this Rumble? But also, like, how fun was it to be there for just, even if it's just a few minutes of being part of it?
Look, to say that there wasn't some amount of boyhood fantasy or dream that came true that night, yeah, I would be kayfabing you, as we say. But yeah, man, it was a lot of fun, and here's the thing too, like, I liked that I did it for a few reasons. I was super nervous to do it. It might not have shown, but I was super nervous. I was thinking, what the heck am I doing, man? This is terrible. As I'm walking to the ring, I'm thinking, this is the worst idea. Why did we do this? This is an awful idea. But, again, we always try to do something to entertain the fans and to swerve them and to surprise them. And what bigger surprise than the guy who's been there for 11 years, never taken a bump, never been put in a physical situation ever, right, on the show. What better way than for him to get up from the commentary table, a voice, because what people don't realize is I've been on every episode of Reality of Wrestling that there's ever been. I've been on it, and to have that voice that you've seen and heard for so long in a different perspective,
right,
walking to the ring to be in a Rumble, it was interesting. It was fun, and so I thought that the audience would react to it, and they did. And I will say, man, I like that I did it too, because I wanted to let myself know that I could do it, even if for a short time. That I was afraid to do it a lot, and I went through with it. I hope that the boys respected me a little bit for doing it. There were a couple of them who said a lot of nice things after the show. I don't mind saying Will All Day and Eric Lockhart were the two that came up to me, and I remember what they said, and it was very special to me. And I just remember like the next morning in a lot of pain. I hurt so bad. I hurt so bad for days, man. I'm not even joking. I could barely walk the next day. And I'm like, how do these people do this, man? They're crazy. They're crazy for doing this all the time. So, but also for that reason, I like that I did it, because I got not that I didn't have respect for what the performers did. I've always had immense respect, but I had a new level of respect for what they did, because that is not something that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can go in there and do. I mean, that is something that takes intense training, and and I was in there with people who I knew I could trust, and I knew would I knew I could trust them, and I knew that I wouldn't be too worse for wear. But even with all that, it sucked. I still was really, really not feeling great.
I'm curious, will there be a return?
Look, man, the thing about the Rumble is you never know. You never know what could happen. You never know what could happen. In all honesty, the road to get me into the Last Stand last year was insane that we even got to that point. And it would be difficult for me to see all those factors come into play again, but you don't know. It could be the new thing. Every year I try. You don't know what's going to happen.
Never say never at that point, especially with anything like that. Never say never. So, and I'm curious with what you've done on commentary at the Last Stand Rumble, what was that entrance that made the crowd go insane?
Wow. I will say there's been a couple, man, that were surprises that stood out to me. We've gotten to have Cassius Ohno, Chris Hero in the Last Stand Rumble, which was a big deal. Jacob Fatu in the Last Stand Rumble, which was a big deal. Of course, having all your road talent, because what's so great about what we do is the fans who come to see us, they want to see the road people. They want to see reality wrestling stars, and some of them get big reactions, like a Will All Day, like a Cam Cole, who's going to be in this Last Stand Rumble. Cam making his return and his debut in the Walker, Texas Lawyer Arena. And this one I'm really looking forward to because we're going to get the Boogeyman. We're going to get Javier Badal.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We're going to get Zilla Fatu. We're going to get Maven in the Last Stand Rumble. And that's always fun, man, because, again, you never know what can happen. You never know who else hasn't been announced that's going to be in that thing.
Yeah, and we're close to wrapping up, too. And especially from your perspective, with 2024 being underway, like, what are you looking forward to this year?
Well, man, there's so much. In terms of reality of wrestling, this is the biggest year that we're going to have. Here's the thing. This is not like some fluke either. We've all worked really hard and given up a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of sacrifices for this show, for this company. Me, like I said, I've been there 12 years now. Working on reality. 12 years is a very long time. Like, that's a long time. It's longer than I've been in my relationship. And so this has been a love and a passion for a lot of us. And everything that's coming together right now with the Last Stand Rumble, just think of this. Our show sold out 3 weeks in advance. There was a time to where I know, like, the week of, we still had, a lot of tickets available. And this is several years back, but it just shows you where we've grown. Our YouTube channel is nearing 750,000 subscribers, and that honestly comes in the last 5 years, because January of 2019, we had like 22,000, right? So just think about that 5-year growth, more than 100,000+ every year for the last 5 years is insane. And where I think reality wrestling is going to go, where I think we're going to go this year, is to levels that no one else ever seen. We get to do things that no one else gets to do, right? There's like I was telling you earlier, there's no place like us. Like, no one else has the opportunity we have to have NXT stars come in. Roxanne Perez, Duke Hudson, Javier Badal, Axiom, Charlie Dempsey. They've all been through the reality wrestling doors just this, the last several months, several of them this year, right? No one has that kind of access, especially nobody here in the state or the Gulf Coast or in the South, for that matter. Actually, scratch that. Nobody in the United States or in the world has a direct pipeline to NXT. Like, nobody. And, there's can only be one number one, right? There can only be one spot for it. And that's what, in my mind, reality wrestling is solidifying this year. not just number one in our city or state or in our region, the number one promotion outside of WWE, outside of AEW, in the United States. And, I count NXT as a part of WWE and Ring of Honor as a part of AEW. There's nobody close. There's just nobody close. It's not even a competition anymore. And I don't mean to sound braggadocious, but it's just how much I believe in reality of wrestling. I mean, I believe in it. And the proof is in the pudding. You take Brian Keith, Roxanne Perez. Look at them right now, top of their game in big companies. There's other people who are well on their way, if not already there, right? Who came from our school. Or there's some people who come through for a little bit, and we put our special sauce on it. And Booker lets them sit under the learning tree to get them to that next level. And then there are people who are back here now. Zilla Fatu. I got to see Zilla make his debut at the Summer Champions in front of 1,100 people, and shock and amaze, and whatever happens, happens. And he's not with us for a little while, but now he's back, and I'm so excited to see my man, see my Oos, Zilla Fatu, give him a big dap and a hug, say, "Hey brother, welcome back." I haven't seen him since he's rejoined the school, and see where we're gonna go with him. 2024, man, it's going to be the biggest year in reality wrestling history, and we're going to further cement ourselves as the number one.
I'm curious, you mentioned all of these up-and-comings who have that potential to go to the next level. Where do you see that currently with the reality wrestling roster?
I think that there's half of our roster right now that could be under contract.
Wow.
I mean, look, we could, if I could pull up our roster, I'd go through all the names, but just think about Will All Day, contract. Matty Ice, contract. Gaspar Hernandez, he could get a contract. Promise Braxton, Gigi Ray, they could get contracts. Fly Death, they could get contracts. Rudy Garza, he should have a contract. Dex the Line Dixon, Teron Beckham, well on their way to getting a contract, in my opinion. Edge Stone, he should have a contract right now. I mean, there's so many. Like, I could look at our whole thing and say, oh, look. And what you notice, too, is when our people go and they do get contracts, they go to the top pretty quickly, or you see them featured on television regularly, and that is not an accident. That's by design. This whole thing's by design, right? It's making sure that when they get there, somebody told me one time, I was working on something and I wasn't getting it. And I told him, well, hey man, practice makes perfect, right? And he goes, no, that's a lie. Practice does not make perfect. Practice only makes perfect when you practice perfect, right? And that's what we do at Reality of Wrestling. We're putting you in perfect practice. Hey, this is your time. You can't go over it, right? This is how we want this to go. You got to stick to it. Here are where the camera angles are. Make sure you hit your spots, okay? Make sure you think about your entrance. Think about your exit. Think about all these aspects of it. And they don't get that at any other independent company. None that I've ever heard of, right? I mean, and then right when you walk through the curtain, you get instant feedback from a two-time Hall of Famer. There's less than a dozen people in the world who could even say that, right? And you get that instant feedback. And you get a culture where everyone's pulling for you. And you could ask anybody, like, we all pull for each other. And sometimes one of our guys might have an idea for something in his match, but then he goes, oh, you know what? That would be really better for you. Like, and then go talk to somebody else. Or I might see something that somebody does in a match, and then I go up to him afterward. Hey, I got this idea while we're out there. What if you do this, this, and this? And you could grow this way, and we could do this. We're always looking out for each other so that when they get to a WWE, an AEW, or even a TNA, or a New Japan, or wherever it is, they're ready to go. Like, they're not, hitting your cues, your times, doing a live promo to camera in front of the house. None of that is foreign to them, right? None of it is foreign to them. That's why Roxanne Perez, within a year, was the NXT Women's Champion. Because it wasn't, not only because she could do the ring, the work in the ring, but she wasn't intimidated by the stage because it's almost like it was simulated for her before she even got there. And to me, if you want to be something in professional wrestling and you're looking for a place to train, and Reality of Wrestling isn't number one on your list, I don't get it. Because we've had people move not only from out of the city, from out of the state, from out of the country to come to reality wrestling. People from Australia, people from Canada, people from Malaysia, have come to train at reality of wrestling because they know the quality of education they're going to get. And here's the other thing, too. I don't know why I'm saying all this, but who cares? You're not going to learn this business in 3 to 6 months. You're not. You're probably not going to learn everything you need to know in 3 to 6 years. However, reality wrestling is a 2-year course. It's 2 years by design. If you go to community college, you don't take Math 101 and then graduate 3 months later at the end of the semester. No,
it doesn't work that way.
That doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. You got to work through all 4 semesters. You got to make sure all your basics are covered, and you're starting to think about what you want to major in when you go to university level. And to me, that's what we simulate too at reality wrestling. Is we know, look, could we take your money and say, yeah, give us $4,000. We're going to teach you a collar and elbow tie up and how to take a couple bumps, send you on your way. Sure. But what will we be doing for the business? Nothing. Nothing. We just may be making guys go learn it on their own. But you have a quality education at the row. And you got people who care about you. You got people who are invested in you. And to me, like, Booker said this on the show, so I don't feel like I'm overstepping any boundaries. He says, I'm still spending WCW money, right? So he doesn't need the money, right? Everything that reality wrestling makes is put right back into reality wrestling. What do you think his goal is? His goal can only be one thing, is to help pro wrestling and to help it continue and to give the tricks of the trade away so that there can be someone who eclipses his career. Do you know how proud he would be if somebody went out there and in 20 years, when Booker's in his late 70s, he's sitting in the crowd at the Hall of Fame ceremony with somebody who he taught, who has eclipsed every record that he accomplished in his career?
Yes.
He'd be way more proud of that than he would be of himself. It's not about his accolades. And it's not about any of our accolades. When somebody gets signed, Emmanuel, we all are so amped. We all call each other and be like, oh, man, they got the deal. It's almost like we got the deal. It's almost like we got the deal. And that's the culture that Booker's cultivated. That's why I've remained there for so long, because it is a culture of inclusion. It is a culture of opportunity. You got to earn your opportunity.
Right.
You got to earn it. It's not given to you. Not everyone gets a turn. There were people who've been in reality wrestling for years and never won a championship. And you might say, well, why not? Well, because they weren't ready to get one yet. You got to be ready for stuff like this. And so every opportunity is earned. But what I will say is, if you do earn it and you put in that work, you're going to be recognized for it. And you're going to get that phone call like, hey, kid, we want to do something. We all want to put you in front of the right people. Or I want to make a phone call for you. And it's happened. And anybody who tells you different is not telling an accurate version of the truth, right? Because I've seen it happen. I've lived it. I've watched it. And, that's why I'm so proud of what reality wrestling is and why people like Booker T and Sharmell and Kevin Bernhardt are the best people in pro wrestling to be around, because they only want you to succeed. That's all.
Exactly. Well, we're out of time, I just realized. But otherwise, I wanted to say thank you so much, Brad, for just tagging along with us on this podcast. And I always end this conversation with this. And I always do this with every guest. The World Health Organization listed adolescents between the ages of 10 and 19. Now, people who are growing up between those ages pick things up along the way as they grow up. Now, if you were in the same room as young Brad Gilmore at the age of, I'm going to throw a number, 15, what would you give him as advice, or what would you like to talk about?
Wow, I feel like I need to break out the couch and get a pillow and lay back and think about it. I would probably tell him, if I were to give him any advice, keep doing what you're doing, because it got me here. There was a lot of things I did wrong on the way here, a lot of things I messed up on, a lot of things I tried and failed at. There was a lot of times I was really, really bad, whether that been the music that I've been a part of, or the radio shows that I was doing, or being a part of Reality of Wrestling, or even to this day, I still do stuff and it's not good, or I made a mistake. But it got me to where I am, and everything you're not makes you everything you are. And to me, look, my favorite movie is Back to the Future, right? You see it right here. Back to the Future. Wrote a book on Back to the Future. If you learn from that movie is, yes, life is about moments. But if you try to go back and you try to change anything, it's going to severely alter where you actually end up. And to me, also the power of the future, as Doc says in the movie at the end of Back to the Future 3, your future hasn't been written yet. No one's has.
Right.
So make it a good one. It's up to you. And that's what I would tell him. Hey, man, I'm not going to tell you what happens.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to tell you anything that goes on. You know what? I'm surprised there's not a paradox happening right now in our meeting.
It might happen. We never know.
It might happen. We never know. But just know to keep doing what you're doing. That's that's the advice I would give.
Wow. That's a really, really good note on this episode. But thanks for coming, Brad, on this episode. And you have the floor. Where can we find you? And if you have anything upcoming, of course, the Last Stand Rumble is one of them. What do you want to plug? What do you want to share? And take it away.
Yeah, no, thank you again for the platform and the time. I really appreciate the conversation. Great questions, by the way, stuff that I don't normally get asked, so I do appreciate it. Yeah, man, you can find everything I do at theboatbradgilmore.com. I mean, that's where you can find, my podcast, which is The Collection, which this year the goal is to hit over 100 interviews with names of notoriety. So far, we're, tail end of February, going into March. I have, I think, about 30 interviews I've done this year, maybe more. And so I'm trying to hit that 100. It looks like I'm probably going to do it. So it might be 200. And what I love about that podcast, man, is I talk to anybody and everybody because I have such a wide range. I love pro wrestling, but I have such a wide range of interests, whether it be film or television or, current events and things of that nature. And I can talk to anybody about anything. So that's what The Collection is. It's a collection of conversations with people whom, I really love and admire. And I mean, there's conversations on there with like Jimmy Fallon or Jay Leno or Kelly Ripa, Mark Wahlberg, Chris Tucker, Brian Johnson from AC/DC.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of great conversations on there with people who I really admire and respect. And there's been a lot coming on. Alan Cumming is just recently on. Who else? Dr. Phil, Bill Maher. Who else is coming up? There's a few others. Jason Williams, who I'm really looking forward to. Malcolm McDowell. There's so many people on that show. So definitely check that out. Check out Clue the Movie podcast, Back to the Future the podcast, the Hall of Fame podcast with Booker T and myself. I got some book projects coming out that I'll be announcing soon. Check me out on the CW39 Spotlight. You can go to CW39.com. There's my own tab. You can check out all the interviews I'm doing on that. And I've taken up enough of your time.
All right. I guess we'll end it here, but otherwise we'll end the recording. We'll click it over here right now. And that was our conversation with Brad Gilmore. Reality of Wrestling's The Last Stand Rumble will be this Saturday, March 9th, 2024, over at Walker Texas Lawyer Arena at Texas City, Texas. Tickets are still online as of the time of this recording, but the box office will open at 6 p.m. over at the venue. The doors will open at 6:30 p.m. and the bell time will be at 7 p.m. that Saturday. There are also other matches in the card, but most notably, the Last Stand Rumble will have a lot of names in this little event, including the Boogeyman, as well as Maven Huffman. And another episode will be out this week, and it will be one of the entrants who will be at the Last Stand Rumble. And just stick around and follow this podcast to figure out who this guest is. You can follow this podcast on Instagram, Threads, X, as well as Spotify at PGTK Pod. leave us a 5-star review. But most importantly, let's share this episode to 2 people so that people can enjoy this episode along with us. Send us an email over at pgtkpod@gmail.com for any comments, questions, or if you want to be a guest on this podcast. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Be awesome with each other, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of the PGTK podcast, an interview podcast.